response could be strengthened or supported more, then they might be looking for less specialist provision. And again, there's that mirror image, isn't there, with the neurodevelopmental pathway that Nikki's just talked about, having that community and earlier support, earlier intervention. And that's, that's borne out by research as well. It's not that you can prevent consent, but you can mitigate and you can improve a young person's life earlier if you do things sooner. So that came across interestingly. I didn't expect that to come from Untitled Chapter. So we've also, as a response and post-inspection, developed something called the Local Area Inclusion Plan. And we have really tried to bring together a high-level plan to improve the visibility of all the local area SEND change activities that are taking on. So we've tried to describe it there in a diagram. And we created the whole thing through many, many workshops and interviews and with all kinds of people. Parent carers and young people have also been very much involved. And we collated all their insights and categories into what we call the five buckets. And recently we've begun to involve and work with older young people. And we had a fabulous event at the Bustler Market. I don't know if anybody was there, but we were able to talk to you at a big youth voice event in July. So, that was just amazing. So we'll build on those things. So what we want is for the Derby Local Inclusion Plan to be a living document and to be regularly updated. It's not fixed in stone. But what we do have is a vision where we do want young people, children, young people to be living their best life. We know that to do that, families need support. This is SEND is a school issue and a family and a community issue. And we do have a clear SEND strategy. We do have much improved job commissioning. And we are also working on something called our trajectory management approach, looking at that demand for EHCPs, demand for specialist places, working with mainstream schools as well as to how we can support them and increase enhanced resource use, etc. So this is a whole system that we're talking about, not a department within the council, but a whole city and a whole range of partners. We really are listening. And so we've engaged with parents, carers and young people to ask them what it really means to be living my best life. We don't want that, as it has been accused of being an empty soundbite. It actually came from a young person living my best life. That a young person in one of our events came up with that and thought that was really, we thought it was just great for the general vision. And what people want is inclusion and improved access to services. What a joined up system, and when you listen to the complexity of what we're describing here tonight, even professionals can't navigate the system. How on earth can parents do this? It is extremely challenging, and I have family members with additional needs, and I can tell you, even as a professional, it's been a real struggle to navigate that system. So my sympathy are absolutely there. We want what parents, children want, and to improved employment opportunities. Really important to improve early interventions, what we've said, and to promote independence and social network. I think that social network is something that's very exciting because that's something that will not cost a lot of money. That comes through, after school clubs, it comes through what the city can offer. And I think the council has a really huge role there in, the vibrancy of the city centre and how is that a city centre for young people, particularly young people with additional needs. And we mapped 56 initiatives into those buckets, knowing that actually what we're doing in terms of the work from all these partners actually leading to improving in those areas. And clearly we want to be held to account that it is. Just giving you, doesn't look like a very interesting list, but to me it's the most interesting list in the world. There's no other way of describing it. Some of our work is now about supporting and working with parents and parents groups. We've revived face-to-face engagement with parents in localities. So I've been working with early years groups in Elverston, for example. We will have a new early years focus in partnership and looking to pilot something in Elverston, but we want to broaden that out to other parts of the city. early years transition we're working on, and we're working with NASON, which is the National Association for SEND in early years. We had that major engagement with young people, and we work very closely with Voices in Action as well on young people's voice. We established the first Derby Autism Dialogue for parents and young people, and that's continuing online and in person. Cultural partners are focused on SEND through the Derby Cultural Education Partnership, which I'm chair of, and we always talk about SEND and young people with additional needs, and things like Hub Theatre and what is what are other partners doing in terms of making cultural offer more accessible in our city. Really important. That links back to that, living my best life, social life, friendships, etc. Adult learning is focused on SEND young people, and if you were at the recent mayor making, you will have seen that the adult learning service provided the food, hospitality. For the first time ever, we didn't go out to an external provider, and I've been told it was one of the best events that we've had, and it led to a spin-off, which was that we sort of collared Paul Simpson, and he's allowed us to run what is now the empty cafe downstairs in the council house, bring it back to life and make it into a SEND community cafe. So that's the proposal to do that. Schools are focusing much more now on life skills and employment, and I supported St Martin's in their application to take over and run the Arboretum Cafe, again leading to employment and employability and skills development. We're developing a supported employment hub for people, and Kingsmead is focusing even more now on skills for work and life, and again neurodevelopment pathway. There is a new person in place, and we're looking at working with Joe Hunter. And Joe is coming from a provider angle and is bringing lots of new ideas and energy into that. But we've already heard lots of that tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. I'm very pleased to see that there is on there a bid gone into the DFE. Thank you. I'm really pleased that there has been a bid gone in there for the DFE with Alexbury Hall. I must say there absolutely needs to be a new ASC school within the local area. I think we can all agree on that, and it's good to see that the council has finally acknowledged what parents and us Liberal Democrats have been telling them and asking for years. So thank you. That's really good to see. Is there any feedback from SEND and SEND parents not on any HCP on SEN support, like the equivalent of SEN support, what it was at schools?
Yeah, that's the next step really, because that's where we want to go into the localities. Sending a piece of paper out. What parents are telling us, they don't want to fill in another form, they don't want to tick another box. But what we want to do is capture their views and looking for anybody who wants to support us in that. Going out into the 5 local areas and actually having events where we can have a roundtable workshops. It doesn't mean we won't capture views and we won't ask questions, but we'll try to capture it as live data. So we can give numbers, percentages and all of that about satisfaction rates, ideas, tips for improvement and all those things that people will definitely come up with. But it's not about people, they don't want to, fill in a form. So we're going to work on those in all the localities. I want to take a personal involvement in that. It's really important to be out there, and then we'll see how that goes, and be able to bring that back in. There are times when we will have a formal survey, but just to ask a blank question, what do you think of SEND? It's too broad, and it's very hard to define what questions would be.
Yeah, I think the board specifically asked for a survey to capture an understanding of why parent carers were dissatisfied across the city, as was identified by Ofsted and CQC. Yeah. So that was the reasoning behind that.
I mean, when surveys have their use, and I've been more than happy to work with you, Danielle, on a council of insight, it's very difficult at the moment to conceive what would go into that survey, but more than happy to work on it.
Okay, I'll open up to the floor next.
I just wanted to follow on from what you said about the surveys, because you said before it was very negative, but now we're getting some progress, and now we're getting neutral and plus response at 66%. But doing these surveys give us, as a board, as reassurance that we're on the right track of giving positive and neutral support. And then if in the future there is a huge negative feedback, then we can identify that and work out why. So I think it is important to carry on doing the surveys.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think it's just to inform, it helps us to shape the work that we do, where we're going right and where we're going wrong. Yeah, so we really use it to inform how people respond on the telephone, where we've got strong staff and weak staff. We understand this is an ongoing process.
Councillor Whitby and then Omar.
Yeah, just to clarify, what's the sample size for this survey we've got here? Have we gone up to every
new EHCP?
Every new EHCP?
Yeah, for the last 2 years.
Last 2 years, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It wasn't done before, so it was a new invention at that time.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be probably helpful as well to capture the views of those that are going through the process. So those who perhaps didn't meet the criteria for an EHCP, or are they satisfied that they've got the right support? And,
That's really good to
capture people's views.
That's
not
probably
just
one of our,
EHCP.
the demand for EHCPs and resourcing that is a massive challenge. But actually, for those who don't meet the threshold, having the capacity to correctly signpost them back into graduated response and to work with schools and settings to help them to understand how to meet that child's need, that is very, very, there isn't a workforce dedicated to that. It's kind of nobody's job. And that sounds ridiculous, but actually our role is, around the EHCP and when it becomes statutory and those panels. So that's why we sort of invented the Derby Senko advice line, and they've actually been helping to signpost. We've kind of commandeered them really to help us to signpost the parents back in. So I think you can learn a lot from that. That's all about the graduated response. And so we're looking at developing a peer-to-peer graduated response tool, work with schools, will definitely involve parents in that. No one else knows about this yet, so I'm only just sort of announcing it here. I think we need to dig into why when the graduate, why is it that it works really well in some places and it doesn't in others?
Were you married now?
From other papers, you mentioned listening to the voice of children and young people. But how do you do this?
Lots of different ways. So certainly we've worked with Voices in Action, we've worked with the team over the last few years. You've done that for years and years.
That's a good question. I'm not a bad person. Well. So we've got different groups, obviously, depending on disability. So, for example, if it's issues concerning deaf young people, then we go where those young people are, which is in rural school for the deaf, Woodlands and Huntsville space for deaf young people. Then we've got talked about sending ambassadors group, so special schools are coming together, bringing some young people, and taking in turns to host, and I suppose those folks are able. And we're looking at, we talked about kind of city-wide stuff, so they're looking at the city vision. So we talked about the social aspect. That's what they're looking at. We're going to be going into schools to talk to young people about homeschool transport. Those young people that receive that homeschool transport. So what we do is we target particular groups on particular topics. There's no point asking, Voices in Action is a mainstream council. No point asking if there's only one or two young people with disability in that group. So we target those young people where it's just like it's no point asking somebody who isn't deaf or have a hearing impairment about deaf issues. So it's more targeted.
Okay. Clearly we work as one council on that because that's been absolutely brilliant. part of the work we've done to work with Adele and the team and with the young people. Also with Alex Manning-Jones and the opportunity area, which has put a lot of resource into things like that bustler market event. So yeah. And it will continue. We're not just doing it once and never going to do it again. It's an ongoing dialogue.
Any other questions?
Could I possibly make a comment? Is that okay? I just wanted to acknowledge, just from the school's perspective, the change in support that we have seen for our SEND children under Pauline's leadership. And I think it's fair to say that needs to be acknowledged and celebrated, because in particular the Derby Sal and the support that we have received through that advice line is something that we've never had before. And it's been remarkable. And when we were going through a particular period of change as a school and we were without a SENCO, actually the support that we received in order to get the correct provision in place for our children was absolutely remarkable. So from a personal perspective, it was very much appreciated.
Yes, thank you. That's good to hear. Also, the board also resolved 6 months ago to request that an update is brought to the board in 6 months' time, covering the single inclusion action plan and its impact, educational healthcare plan, timescales, parental, attitude, yes, we discussed that. So it would be the timescales. Is there any updates on the single inclusion action plan and the EHCP timescales and change of culture within the council and social care assessments? So yeah, action plan, single inclusion action plan and its impact, education healthcare plan timescales and social care assessments, including whether or not they are being offered.
Yeah.
Those.
So the social, the inclusion plan is something that we actually had something on a piece of paper. What we realised was it hadn't been socialised, it hasn't got out to everybody, and we thought that was really the most important thing. So we are currently working on that, and a number of parents have been involved in those workshops. We've had 2 workshops, we're about to have a 3rd one. So I suppose what I will say is the process is more important than the outcome of a piece of paper. At the same time, the Senbury paper has actually is going to require every area to have a local inclusion plan. So we're also wondering, well, what will they give a national format for that? Nevertheless, we are going to be prepared to be held to account for outcomes for young people, and just we know that improvements in support from the local area for schools, for parents, etc., is continuously improving, and we've had lots of feedback from that. And I think what we're currently working on is what are the actual impact measures, what are the statistics that we can measure that will tell you that the local inclusion plan is working, because some of those are within our control and some of them are not within our control and are driven by all kinds of things, not excluding the pandemic. So I suppose that sounds a bit of a woolly answer, but what I will say is we're working on getting it right and working with all our performance teams on the measurables, and I'm really excited to be able to continue to bring that to you, to be able to account for our strength, but to get it right. In terms of the EHCPs, I understand the EHCP statistics are part of I think some colleagues in the room are coming to, there's a performance surgery, isn't there, for EHCPs. We did make huge strides of an improvement from a very low base, I've got to say, in the first couple of years of the new teams and new work. Because of demand, partly because of demand, that has really slowed down. And the other big factor, which I described to you, was the loss of the number of educational psychologists, which is part of a wider pattern among health professionals and clinical people who are all moving into private practice without exception. Every single one is now earning 4 to 5 times what they would earn by staying in post and are, writing statutory advices for the local authorities or whatever. So, yeah, it's been really, really challenging. We are working with a small core and with locums, and we have got the rates back up. I think we're about 42% currently on new plans being assessed within 20 weeks. And that has increased since the beginning of the year when it hit to a low because of the lack of educational psychologists. We also have maternity leaves. And again, if you've got a workforce where you've got 12 young females and they're on maternity, it's unfortunate. It's just not an easy profession to cover because there's a national shortage. So we are working with the University of Derby and with other partners and with other local authorities to look at how we can actually carry on building that educational psychology workforce, because that is definitely going to hold us back on those statistics if we don't.
Any further questions? No. Okay, so to move over to the recommendations, then to consider the presentation and make a comment or recommendation on the discussions, presentation received. I would like to propose that we bring back to the board at a further meeting in the new year the HCP's quality and timeliness, particularly, because I think it's really important as a board that we're keeping an eye on that, really.
Will you have the information from the surgery will have taken place by then as well, won't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, I like the idea, just going ahead, I like the idea of resurveying the people who had the initial EHCP survey, whenever it was, and going back to them at some point in time to see what their reaction to the whole process is. Yeah, I just think you get a lot of information out of that. I mean, it might be that you might get divergent sort of responses. Some might think it's fantastic, and some might be, totally up and hated. So I suppose it would be an honest picture of where we are. Clearly, it's it's good. It's good what we've got so far, and I don't think we need to be afraid of surveying people.
No. Well, I think to have up-to-date information, as a board, we could commission a survey and work with officers to do that, and to ensure that is.
So we already, just to be clear, we already survey every parent going through the EHC process.
Yeah, I just think
So
to go back to
we're going back to 2000 pre the inspection, pre 2019. You have to identify which parents had gone through the EHCP process pre then, and take a sample of them, say 50 or 100, and what was their view. What are we seeking to find? Are we seeking to find that the process has improved? It's better now than it was then.
Yeah.
What's the, purpose of the?
I think to capture a really good sample, as the board initially.
We do question we do survey every single parent.
Was to ensure, that parent carers is undertaken, including all parent groups across the city, to capture their level of satisfaction. So effectively, we could go out
not on the EHC
wider.
Right.
Yeah, because it's really important, and that was specifically due to the CQC and Ofsted report identifying the level of dissatisfaction among parent carers in the city. So we need to have a look underneath that and see, well, why are they not satisfied? What can the council do?
Well, it's the local area.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Yeah, what can the local area do? Absolutely, everybody collectively.
Because the council is responsible for statutory services. We do go beyond that, and we do take a big lead on strategy, etc., etc. We didn't have to. It's a chosen role because we could focus entirely on the statutory things, but actually, it's what's influencing that statutory role. Those partnerships, that relationship with parents, that relationship with schools, that all matters, and we spend a huge amount of our time on that. If you want us to talk about evolving some kind of survey, then it would need to be co-produced, because it's not something that we're quite clear about in terms of what is it that we're asking. Because if you ask, are you happy with send, you will just get a million different answers, and I think a lot of them will be quite negative. And I think we're gonna how would I put it? It would be very demoralising on the basis of the good work that I think has already been expressed tonight. But, you know, for everyone involved, how much we put our hearts and souls into it.
Yeah, I
To see
appreciate
it
that.
100%.
But, you know, social care, other areas in the council, they regularly do surveys to understand levels of satisfaction across their area. We do need to understand why and what these core issues are and how we can make that better.
And they deliver a very specific service. So they are the officers who deliver that service, and they can survey that. SEND is a broader, you know, because what we'll say is if we survey it, parents will be saying they're not happy with it. They might be happy with their EHCP process, but they might not be happy with their school, or they might not be happy with their child's social life. You know, there's so many places to go. That's why it's really good to decide what we're asking and why we are only actually have statutory services to question specifically on.
I think that'll be really good to identify common themes that are coming out across the city as well, really. So yeah, I mean, we could have a working group on that.
I think that'd be good information, to be honest with people. I know we can't do everything about it ourselves, but I think you're asking.
Well, that's the local area. Yeah. I mean, I work very closely with Nikki, for example. So you know, obviously, hundreds of parents would say we're very disappointed in SEND because we're on the waiting list. We've been on the waiting list for 18 months. We're completely depressed. We don't believe in this system anymore. And how do we manage that information coming through? Well, we triage that to Nikki and say, well, this is information that people are not happy with your NDP. And we already know that because of the numbers. But
yeah, so if
within 3 years, we'll have got people through the system quickly. So the next time we survey them, the results.
Well, we're already working on that. The survey wouldn't change that in that the work's already happening. So I suppose if you're saying you want another layer of reassurance,
just can't do any harm for us to know where the pinch points are, I suppose. Right across the service, even if there's things that the council can't directly influence, I suppose it would be helpful to know where people are dissatisfied and why. And I just think it'd be helpful to survey them and then survey them again in the future, and hopefully the results have improved. I mean, we might get panned first time. I appreciate that. I know what you say. People are going to complain.
Well, we're in a better place than we were.
Absolutely, yeah. That's it.
3 years ago.
It won't be as bad as maybe it would have been 2 or 3 years ago.
No, absolutely.
And then maybe we'll do it again.
And of course, when we are inspected at the next full inspection, there will be a parent survey. And you know, what we want to say is actually it's not perfect, but actually things are better.
Better to know the results of the survey now and identify the issues so that when the survey comes, we're getting
absolutely. Well, I said we're constantly surveying, we're constantly engaging, we're constantly discussing. Devising a single survey is actually the challenge.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, it will probably be helpful.
To engage in it.
Yeah, probably be helpful then to have a working group on that issue
Yeah.
to design and actually get around the table with partners, with yourselves, and you know, and to design that survey. What does that look like? You know, how can we
absolutely great?
How can we answer these questions? I think that'd be really helpful. How can we
that's the right
have
question.
wider engagement?
Yeah,
because that's what we're looking for, isn't it? Really,
okay.
Wider engagement, because communication is key ultimately.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why we're going to be out there in localities. So yeah.
Yeah. That would be helpful.
Yeah, let's get that group together.
Yeah, so
Good.
recommendation that we form a working group to discuss creating and to create a survey to ascertain parents' views, level of satisfaction across the city. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Right now we really are moving over to item 8. Thank you.
Now we're going to the new slideshow. Oh, it's not working. That's on this table. That's all great. I might just. Apologies, I'm going to keep it this size, but obviously I'll be talking to you as well. So, oh, is it? Right, sorry, so there's a bit of a delay on it. So I've been asked to give an overview of the education papers. One of them is the white paper, which is obviously much further advanced than the green paper. Oh my God, this is doing itself. And again, this is an overview. So I will say, and those of you who are in the know will know that we are going through some of the biggest reforms, certainly I've ever had in my professional lifetime, and that's fairly substantial. And Andy Smith has also said the same, our People Services Strategic Director, because you've got the independent care review, Send an AP green paper, and you've got the schools white paper and the integrated care systems and all the things that colleagues in health know about. So this is a very interesting time, shall we say, euphemistically. But the background to the SEND review, and I'll start with the SEND review. This was launched in response to growing frustration about the SEND system, and that comes from parents, young people themselves, schools, local authorities, health colleagues. It's everyone feels frustrated with the national system. And so the SEND review sought to understand what was creating those challenges in the system and attempting to go through an improvement. And they've listened to hundreds and thousands of children, young people, families, teachers, and those working in local government. And it became clear that alternative provision is also part of the SEND system, which we also agree with in Derby. So an alternative provision review is included in the review, and I am absolutely delighted about that. So their analysis of the problem is that there is a vicious cycle operating in the system. I think everyone could have told them this, but the fact is they've done the research now and they've developed it into a paper that actually confirms what we all thought, which was that there is a real lack of common understanding, incentives, and shared priorities to support children and young people with SEND, which, this is why we have the fragmented system. We have misaligned accountabilities, inefficient use of funding, perverse incentives and delays in accessing support are driving poor provision and escalating costs. And we just have to look at the escalating costs in the independent private sector, specialist places outside Derby, and they are astronomical, averaging about 60,000 per pupil per year. Are the outcomes great? Probably not. Are we looking at it? We are. Sometimes they go well over £100,000 a year for just what I would call a normal education for a child with additional needs. The needs escalate, and families and schools seek EHCPs and top-up funding to ensure needs can be met. And of course, that pot has more than run out in Derby, and we're now at a deficit because of demand, and it reflects the national position. There's a lack of confidence and low inclusivity and poor experiences in mainstream. I would add that I would say that is only the case in some schools and settings. This is what the DFE found overall. But what I find is variability. Why is it that some schools are able to meet similar needs and others are not? And there's a million reasons for that. We're getting to know our city very well. Decision making can result in costly placements, and resources directed from mainstream to fund increasing numbers of individualised placements with tailored provision. So you're counterbalancing funding the whole system to funding very expensive individual placements, and of course every parent wanting the best for their child, quite rightly, and a system that can't actually afford to meet those needs. So the goal is that ultimately children and young people achieve their outcomes that help to prepare them for adulthood. That's the challenge. So the vision for the SEND and alternative provision green paper was hoping to create a more inclusive education system with excellent local mainstream provision, and we absolutely believe in that in Derby. We want to also improve the outcomes and experiences of children and young people with SEND. So it's not just, exam results, it's their life, their social abilities, their looking at their strengths and their abilities. Are they musical? Are they sporting? They're kids with loads of different talents and strengths. And actually, they've probably had a lifetime of focusing on the things they can't do rather than things they can do. I think we need to change that. We do need to have a strong specialist sector. In Derby, we're very fortunate. All of our providers are good or outstanding, and we do have, a lot to be proud of. Have greater national consistency in access and support. That's not within our gift, but we definitely want that. And we want to ensure that the system is financially stable and delivers value for money. We're working on delivering better value for money now. That's the work that we're doing through the High Needs Transformation Programme. It's not going to give us more money. So we need more money in the system. We like you with your 10 million. We need millions to actually to be able to deliver what we want. But at the same time, we want to make sure it's not being wasted, that our system is efficient and effective in using that money wisely. So the Green Paper itself proposes an improved system by doing a series of things. One is to establish a national SEND and AP system with clear standards on what works, a bit like our outcomes framework. We're looking at that in Derby. What is it that, what are the standards to be expected and what we're aiming for? And that's going to be a massive biggie. I mean, we have no idea of how they will achieve this yet. To building capacity in mainstream education so those children with SEND can be in mainstream. I'm passionate about that. And I think the pressures on schools are tremendous. And I think we've got to find a way forward that, there's got to be a way of supporting schools more and sharing expertise between schools so that we actually really can practically give people practical support. I'm thinking about newly qualified teachers, for example. They have such limited knowledge. They just haven't got the life experience or professional experience. But they have children with additional needs in their class. It's a massive challenge for them. We all acknowledge that. I was a teacher and a head teacher myself. And I know that, we're always working to upskill, build capacity, support staff to help meet those needs. It's a massive challenge. So we also want appropriate and affordable specialist provision, and that goes right through special schools, enhanced resource units, inclusion hubs, mainstream schools. For clear roles and strengthened accountability, funding reform. So that funding reform for me is pivotal. That has to be a national funding reform so that we all know who's responsible for what. So if you had a dysfunctional graduated response system, and if you had massive gaps in the health service, the demand would come out in demand for EHCPs, and it's the council that pays for that. But actually, the issues are, if you like, the causes of the need are much wider and sometimes even bigger. So it's very, very complex arena. We also want to deliver change for children and families and a delivery programme. I've not yet got a clear picture of what the DfE would want for that, but to stabilise the system in the immediate term. They haven't promised additional funding, but we would love to see that from them. So what does it mean for children and families? They have really strengthened the language and code reduction, and they have had parents and young people on the national board and working on the concept of local inclusion plans. They want a more streamlined system, less complicated. They want more children to be supported in mainstream and to be educated close to home, because home to school travel is rising by the millions every year in terms of cost. And there are some concerns on rights approaches and the rights of children and young people to have certain types of provision. And I think they are encountering dilemmas in looking at children's rights and some of the new proposals. And I think the Council for Disabled Children has actually brought those forward. What does it mean for health? So there's huge implications for health. That SEND partnership and multi-agency work. They're looking at developing the designated health officer role. We already have the designated clinical officer role. They talked about every integrated care board having a named exec lead for SEND, and SEND seems to be much more important now within the new integrated care system. And then giving statutory guidance on SEND for ICBs through the Health and Care Bill. Nationally, they're looking at greater focus on health on the National SEND Board, health colleagues being part of that board, national SEND standards, and what would the health's role in diagnosis, early intervention and prevention be clear? Would that be clear? Again, you take what Nikki's talked about tonight. How does that fit within SEND standards? And if you're asking people, are they happy about SEND? They'll say, well, I'm not happy with this, I'm happy with that. And it might be that they're not happy with their health dimension. It might be they're not happy with their school. And maybe that's what we need to find out. And then importantly, there's a health workforce analysis, and a bit like dentistry, there's a massive crisis in the health workforce at all levels. If you think about the educational psychologists, you think about people delivering basic care, care workers in home, children's homes and in schools, it's a real challenge. So social care as a key partner in the Green Paper, again, they're part of the National SEND system. They're part of the National Local SEND Partnership. Clearly, Andy Smith represents the social care in Derby at its highest level. Is that local authority led at the moment, rather than having a collective responsibility or accountability as a city? They're looking at standardising and digitising the EHCP process, which should actually better include social care systems. We've already implemented that in Derby, and we have just recently implemented something called liquid logic, and we can now have synergy and communication between social care and the EHCP system. And we're currently now manually inputting all of the historic EHCPs going back for years, and we have over 3,000 EHCPs. The new ones will automatically go into the digitised system, but the old ones have to be manually inputted. Again, a focus on mainstream and working what's ordinarily available social care support and proportionate pathways, for example, short breaks. What does it mean for commissioning? And it's a huge role. Moving to the ICBs, which is again mentioned in health, moving regions in regional groups in the Department for Education, and the new structure from September 22. It's change all around. Issues around low incidence, high cost needs, and looking at complexity there. Quality assurance of places and outcomes. And I think there's probably quality assurance of places, but I think outcomes needs a massive piece of work. And our parents, if you like, getting value for money, knowing that £100,000 has been spent on their child every year, they really feel their child is getting value there. And complex children, again, it's harder and harder to place some of those complex children as the places are not available. And there's a parallel to this in fostering and adoption, in that the demand is increasing, but the placements aren't always there. Next steps, well, on the Green Paper, the consultation closed on the 26th of July. A huge raft of responses have gone in, and the government is planning to produce a detailed delivery plan in the autumn. We'll see. Not heard much about it. There will be legislative implications, but in Derby we'll continue our improvement journey by doing things differently, better. We've submitted to the consultation, and we've made our views very, very clear. And we know what works, and we know what we need to make it work. It's just the resources are simply not there. Moving on to Opportunity for All, which is the government's white paper, Strong Schools with a great teachers for your child. Well, isn't that what we all want as a parent and as an auntie, a great auntie myself, and all of that? We all want that. So it's kind of motherhood and apple pie, really. The schools paper was published in 2022, and I'm afraid for those people who have asked to be involved in consultation, the consultation ended in 2021, so that ship sailed quite a while ago. Again, they're looking at having excellent teaching and improved inclusion, so that's good. new targets to improve 90% of pupils to achieve the expected standard in Key Stage 2, which is the end of primary education. And I think schools have got something to say about that. If you've got 25% of children with special educational needs, is 90% of them going to achieve the national standard? Well, again, you do that. So the parent pledge is something that they feel is important. If a child falls behind in reading or maths, they'll get the right support to get it back on track. And you might say, well, isn't that what's already happening? Clearly, it's not happening in every situation. The role of the local authority, interesting one for me. I've worked in local authority school improvement since 2007. I've been a head teacher before that. And I had an army of people around me when I was involved with school improvement, Sheffield City Council. And that just was cut away completely, down to handfuls of people now, tiny call. So of course, I believe that the local authority has a strong coordinating role. Even within an academised system, we have a powerful role in championing children within the democratic mandate in our area, particularly the most vulnerable. And we're looking at how can we influence what happens in Derby. So the key objectives in the white paper are excellent teacher for every child, tick. High standards of curriculum, attendance and behaviour, absolutely, we all want that. And pledge to parents who are behind with maths and English to get evidence-based targeted support, yes. A stronger and fairer school system that works for everyone. And I think this is where we come to what's that system looking like. They're looking at investing all of these things. I won't read them all, but really there is quite a bit of investment there. And also working with a range of strategies to improve curriculum attendance behaviour, mainly commissioning academy trusts to deliver, as well as the teaching schools. Tutoring, which we know hasn't particularly worked well because there just aren't the available tutors. So I think 6 million tutoring courses might be a good thing, on paper. But actually, I'm not sure it's where schools would put £6 million if it were just to hand it over to the school themselves. But I do believe that the Education Endowment Foundation should be re-endowed, and they've given us some good research and help. So one of the most important things for schools that are not yet academies is that they're looking for a fully trust-led system. And that we might have about 30 schools left who are LA maintained in Derby. And those schools are all looking, since the white paper came out, looking at options. Are they going to join an academy trust? Are they going to come to me and seek to help be part of forming a local authority, what's called a local authority trust? Or are they going to just wait it out and continue and see if there are policy changes, or whether this is actually not a policy that's able to be implemented? And there were some very famous challenges in Oxfordshire when I was head of school improvement there, where the lead member, a Conservative, went into absolute battle with government at that point, because all those good and excellent schools in Oxford and Oxfordshire, they didn't want to be told what to do. So they felt it was real nice state stuff, so it's quite interesting. So the DFE is engaging with local authorities to seek views. They contact me every week about what's happening in Derby, what the school's saying, what NAP's saying, and they have started a pilot for what they're calling local authority maths. We didn't rush into that pilot because you had to have that in place by the end of July. It was just an impossible task, and I think they already had identified their pilots. So we're going to stand back a little bit and wait. We've been in touch with every secondary school. Secondary schools are really interested in, what's, what the issue is, and we're going to be coming to every primary school in the next few weeks, every remaining primary school, to look at, what their views are, because essentially it's the schools that make the decision. It's not the local authority. We can just, we can support, nurture, bring together. So, that test and learn pilot, those test and learn pilots, we haven't given a deadline as to when they'll report back what's being learned, but certainly we're doing work in the background as to what that might look like. But people, not everyone is in a great rush to deliver the government's plan, I would say. And I say that with greatest respect to being in a majority Conservative, with having a Conservative lead member, because, you know, it's about autonomy, it's about the shape of the city, it's about being local, and, you know, we think those are important questions.
Thank you. It was a very comprehensive talk around the paper, so thank you. I'll open to the floor. Any questions?
Question. I'm very grateful for what you said about the white paper, the bill, whatever. I know we're past the point where we can influence anything. I appreciate that, but if they're always asking you for things, you know, I'm just horrified by that thing. Completely horrified by the fact that the expectation is that, you know, everyone becomes an academy, but not just. It's not even as simple as that. It's like even the standalone academies will be subsumed into strong academies. So it's just taking whatever is working, I suppose, and just doing something different, as we did the first time round when the good and outstanding schools were forced to become academies just because, I don't know, because of ideology. And the statistics that have been put with the original, I don't know, it's the green paper or whatever at the time, have been proved to be flawed. Because the evidence they used were involving schools that were currently local authority schools that improved, and the governments had to accept that was flawed. But they haven't changed the bill at all accordingly. It's just an ideological centralisation of schools, with a very few people having complete control of the entire school system. And I'm thinking, well, what are they gaining other than maybe make it more difficult for teachers to collectively bargain pay? That's all I can think, really. And they'll probably be also putting more power into the hands of their, I mean, without being too political, their friends, their donors, you know, the corporate world, who will be running our entire publicly funded education service. 100%. It is absolutely outrageous what they're doing. Of course, some of these things are admirable, obviously, but the basic thrust of it is to completely academise us, and not just that strong academies, whatever that is. And there is no facility for a school to come out of one of these trusts. So once you're in there, that is it. It doesn't matter how bad it is. And of course, the bigger these trusts are, the less, well, there's no talk about democratic deficit. It's like being autocracy. This is just, there's some schools with no governments, I believe. The bigger they get, the less chance there are to have any local say at all. Forget democracy. So I don't know what you can say. I mean, it's just a total disaster, and the most retrograde step I can imagine there's been in education generations, probably ever. So I'm not particularly pleased about it. You know, I'm so glad we've still got some schools that local authority run. Fantastic. Oh yeah, another thing to point out is this whole thing about the you know, the local authority trusts. Of course, they're not going to be run by the local authority. They've put this in as a little sweetener, I think, to say, oh yeah, these will be nice local authority trusts, but they won't be. They're just being put together by the local authority. They're not in any way run by the local authority, so they're not democratic either. They're not accountable either. So there'll be no accountability. This is public money. You know, it's absolutely unbelievable.
Any further questions?
Sorry. Sorry. I just thought I'd have to say that. I've been waiting for that for a while. But yeah,
it's a kind of final phase of the academy programme, isn't it? You know, that's been happening since.
Yeah.
And I understand everything you've said, and I've been in education all the way through it. And And I agree with all that information was flawed and that data was flawed, showing how much better academies perform than it was actually wrong. But again, they haven't changed anything. So what you're saying, is absolutely. And you'd say, and I think what the political intention behind it, even though there are some marvellous multi-academy trusts, and I went to an award ceremony for staff in one of the larger trusts across Nottingham and Derby, and the standard of staffing and the inspiration there was just amazing. So great work is being done with children every day in those places. But I mean, I suppose the original intention is to remove local government and the local politics from education. And that's the you could have created a self-supporting school system in a different way, i.e. school-to-school support, executive headships, groups of schools, families of schools. That could have been invented. I could have invented that, and I would have loved that, because that's all about respecting that, schools are the best at improving themselves, and I respect that, and I still believe in that. That doesn't need to translate into an academy system, but it has, and I've expressed that this is a very big push from government to finalise it.
Yeah. No, I don't know what the schools do, whether they just try and wait it out or resist or what, I don't know.
Yeah, mixture. Some are saying, listen, it's about time, we really do need to join, we want to be part of a family of schools, and
that's because they don't want to miss out. They don't want to do it, but they don't want to miss out.
There's a mixture of things, you're absolutely right, and others, standalone schools, standalone academies, they're already academies, so they haven't got an aversion to the academy programme. So that's not an ideology, there's a different ideology there. Theirs is about autonomy and not being subsumed by a bigger organisation.
Also a massive issue, isn't it? There might be some, I'm sure there are some excellent standalone academies.
Oh, absolutely.
They're just going to be a number, amongst many.
So it's complex.
So, youth Matt, Omar?
I've got a question. What would happen though we follow the green and white paper?
Well, they're two separate papers, and one in terms of what I would say is, in Derby, we're already doing a lot of the work that's set out within the green paper. I'd say we're very much ahead of other areas in terms of. But what we will have to do is to look at what the government, brings in terms of the new national guidance. So we'll wait to hear about that because it's not happening yet. But actually, it's business as usual, the green paper for us. In terms of the white paper, this is the debate that we're having really. And, I think it's largely schools, we've got colleagues here from schools. Schools will deliver improved teaching, improved outcomes. What's happening in Derby in terms of the Department for Education is that we are a priority investment area. So there is a brand new board, and I'm part of that board with the Department for Education. And that is going to look at how to achieve the ambitions within the white paper, the 90% in terms of reading, writing and maths and all of that. And that's going to be really interesting because the first meeting was during the holidays, not everyone's there. So the second meeting will take place soon. And I'm really interested in how they're going to look at vulnerable groups, children with additional needs, children of different ethnic minorities, because, as a council officer, I am here to also advocate for the most vulnerable in our city. And I'm not sure that that's quite on the agenda yet. So I think that's going to be quite an interesting board, and that's something big for Derby.
Any further questions? No. Well, I have some questions regarding the green paper. Can you confirm that the council has made a city council response to government on the green paper?
Yeah, so we made a response as a local area, and I think I sent you a copy of it. So certainly asked for that to be shared, but not shared widely, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But that was from the local area, which includes the council, and we pulled that together, and the council pulled that together.
Who was consulted from the local area?
Everybody in the Send board, really. So we had Nikki was there, a whole partnership approach, as you'd expect from the local areas there.
Yeah.
Everyone is able to respond individually as well. So all parents were encouraged to respond individually, so that it's not, so we responded as a local area because we thought that's the right way to do. But actually every school can respond, every SENCO can respond, every parent can respond. And let's see what is said.
If it's a local area response, is there any reason why it's not published on the website?
Not really, it's just we've literally only just done it on the 22nd of July. I haven't got permission from all the partners to share the response because it is a shared response from health, social care, parent groups, private providers, etc. So, you know, we didn't say at the beginning we were going to share it, and it isn't meant to be a publicly shared document.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because Newcastle City Council, for instance, has published their response to the Green Paper from the Newcastle Send Local Area Partnership. The SEND partnership has encouraged parent, carers, schools, settings, SEND professionals and social care to contribute to the government's consultation, and their views were included in this response document that they've actually published on the council.
So we have a whole local area response, and then we also encourage parents and individuals to respond as well. So the fact we haven't published our response is something we could do. No reason why not, but we didn't set out to do it at the beginning. Yeah. I'm happy to look at that, Councillor.
Okay. So, yeah, I'm sure I can speak for everybody on the board, and I hope they feel the same, that we're sorry if the council hasn't widely consulted nor published the City Council's response to the Green Paper right now. And I think we should ask the council to do so immediately. So as part of the recommendations, unless there's any further questions, I would like to recommend and request that Council Cabinet publishes the council's response to the Green Paper immediately.
Apologies, can I just say that it's the local area, not a council response? So we'd have to ask for the local area, board.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the cabinet member has oversight. Yeah, the cabinet member has great oversight over, what's going on within the local area, and I'm sure it is a partnership that they are all working together.
Yeah, it's just not a city council response.
Yeah, so I want to put forward recommendation that council cabinet seeks to publish the council's response to the Green Paper immediately. So yeah, we all agreed with that. Yeah.
Oh, there isn't one. There isn't one. That's all. There isn't a council response.
Yeah.
The local area response then. So we'll change
I'm
that.
happy with that.
And so the recommendation is to request that council cabinet publish the local area's response to the Green Paper immediately. Okay, for clarification. So we're all happy with that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Right. So moving on to the work programme and topic review. Are we all happy with it as it stands? Is there anything anybody else would like to add on there or see on the future agenda?
We're going to have the youth service have to come to a meeting as soon as possible. I don't know where it is on here.
iOS.
Yeah, where is it?
It's down for December.
Oh, yeah. Oh, much earlier than that, as soon as possible, really, the youth service. Anyone can bump that,
Yeah, we can start on the next one for October.
please, yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. If that's okay with the officers and they're able to have the information ready.
Give it a go, please,
They would have to consult with the officers, but in consultation with the officers, they're happy that they've got that information ready for the next meeting. They're happy with that. Yeah. Yeah, all agreed on that one. So unless there's anything else. No, we'll close the meeting this evening. Thank you.